What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the World Juice channel, and welcome to something a little bit different. Yes, I am going to be starting a podcast here on the channel. I've wanted to do this for a long time now, and I've finally gotten up the courage, and I've gotten up the time and the energy, actually, to put it together. So this is going to be maybe a weekly thing, maybe like 2 or 3 times a week if I can find the time to record the podcasts, edit them, and get them out to you guys. But this is hopefully something going forward that I can keep going, keep doing, keeping up with, and I want to talk to you guys without having to like play a video game or something. So I thought a podcast would be the best option. Now, the basics of this podcast are going to be just whatever I want to talk about, basically. It could be anything. There's no barrier on what I'm going to be saying. Like, it's going to be unvaulted. It's going to be, like, no holds barred, basically, to use a WWE term. Like, I could talk about anything. This could be football. This could be any type of sport, really, basketball, baseball, anything like that. It could be my personal life. If you guys want to ask questions about my personal life, you can do that in the comment section down below. We can have a whole podcast on what I've done in my life, which is nothing, but that could be a whole nother episode. I could talk for 2 hours on that. But yeah, so this is basically what it's gonna be. It's gonna span from anything like where I was born to what I do for a living, or what my favorite movie is, or what I feel about the world as a whole, like how I feel about the state of the NCAA, and signing and paying players, or what I think popcorn, or I don't know, my favorite food, or just anything. Basically, it's like anything is possible in this podcast. But I just wanted to get it out to you guys for you guys to listen to, because the whole goal of this is just to let you guys in on my life and just make it be like, I want to be friends with everybody, like on YouTube. Like, I want to make friends with you and make strong connections. So I feel like this is going to be the best way to do it. And also, I want this, like, this isn't going to be something you have to sit down and listen and watch. Like, this isn't going to be a video where you have to have your eyes on the screen the entire like 30 minutes or 40 minutes, however long an episode is of mine on my channel. This is going to be something where you can just close your phone, listen to it, and like put it on in the background or something while you're doing homework, or put it on in the background while you're washing dishes, or I don't know what you guys do, but just have it on in the background, or listen to it while you're studying. I'm taking a shower. Think about me in the shower, I guess. You guys can basically whatever you want to do with it, as long as you guys are listening. That's what a podcast is. So I think for the first episode, the first topic I'm going to talk about, I just got done watching, like literally 20 seconds ago, I just got done watching the Big Ten championship game, Ohio State versus Wisconsin. And I feel like that's a good starting point for this podcast, this first episode, because I'm like fresh off, my emotions are high, my adrenaline is high, because I just got done rooting the crap out of Ohio State, because they are my favorite team, if you guys didn't know. I have mentioned it a couple of times on my channel, but I don't know, you probably guys already know that was kind of a stupid thing to say. But anyway, getting back to the main topic. Thoughts on the actual game as a whole are very diverse. At first, like, it was a mixture of emotions. The first half was absolutely mind-numbing. Like, Wisconsin got out to a 7-0 lead with Jonathan Taylor touchdowns, big touchdown run that he had, and then Ohio State's offense just was not there. They don't know what they were doing. And then Wisconsin just kept piling on. Their defense was phenomenal. You got to give credit to Wisconsin, because they absolutely crushed Ohio. There was nothing that the offensive line for the Buckeyes could do to stop Wisconsin on that one. It was absolutely crazy. So going into the second half is really where I was like, okay, this is gotta change. Something has to happen here. Ryan Day has to make some adjustments that Fields on track. So that's exactly what he did, because the third quarter they absolutely like annihilated Wisconsin. But I was definitely worried there at halftime watching the court with Urban Meyer and Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and all those guys on the Fox halftime report. I was definitely worried because it was like 21-7 going into half. So I was really, really worried and very nervous about this game going into the second half. I was sweating a lot. It was very profuse. So going into the second half, I was worried, and then the third quarter happened, and I wasn't worried anymore because Ohio State jumped out to what was it, like a 24 unanswered points or something like that, and it ended up being 34-21, I think was, or 34-21. Yeah, I think that was the score. And that carried on into the fourth quarter where they kept the pressure on. J.K. Dobbins is an absolute monster. He definitely deserves to be in New York, which is another thing. That brings up another point. The Heisman buzz and the Heisman predictions are driving me nuts because, yes, Jonathan Taylor deserves to be in New York. He deserves to have a invite to New York. And yes, Trevor Lawrence may even deserve to have an invitation to New York. And Tua before he got hurt probably deserved to have an invitation to New York. But if you're going to take anybody in the world to have an invitation to New York, it should be the three Ohio State Buckeye players: Justin Fields, J.K. Dobbins, and Chase Young. Chase Young for sure. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, Chase Young, he took money, he borrowed money, he broke NCAA rules, he got suspended for 2 games. Yes, I know he got suspended for 2 games. He apologized for it. It was a family friend loan who gave him the money, so it's not a big deal. He came out and said he owned up to his mistakes, and he sat out the 2 games, so I don't think that should be a burden. I don't think that should hinder him from getting an invitation and going to New York and winning the Heisman, because he's been the most dominant player in college football the entire season. And he's definitely been one of the players of all time that I've noticed. Like, I've been watching college football since I was like 10, maybe 9 at the earliest. And very many dominant players like Chase Young is. And that's on both sides of the ball. I mean, I've watched Vince Young, who was absolutely crazy. He was phenomenal. And Reggie Bush, I mentioned him earlier. Reggie Bush was dominant. And Marcus Mariota was even very dominant. Jadeveon Clowney was an absolute killer for South Carolina back in the day. So I've seen some pretty dominant players, but Chase Young is just on another level. And yeah, I know that the past couple of games, Michigan and Wisconsin now in the Big Ten Championship, he hasn't really done much. But he doesn't really need to when the rest of the defensive line is just as good. Well, not just as good, but they are right there on level as well, but just not on the same level as Chase Young. But they are good too, so they can pick up the slack for Chase Young when he gets double teamed and triple teamed and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think that, and I'm not trying to be a homer. Yeah, I know I'm a Buckeye fan. I'm a big, huge Buckeye fan, and look, the Buckeye fans saying that all 3 Buckeyes should be invited to New York and win the Heisman. Yes, I know that's what it sounds like, but you just look at the facts, look at the stats, look at the completion percentages. Justin Fields had like 40 touchdowns and 1 pick on the season, so he can't not go to New York and at least have a shot at the Heisman. And Chase Young has the all-time record for sacks in a season for the Buckeyes. So, I mean, you can't deny the straight facts of what this team is doing and what these 3 players are doing. J.K. like 3rd or 2nd all-time in Buckeye history on rushing yards in a career. So these three guys have just changed the game for this Ohio State team, because Ohio State are just out of control the next 2 seasons. I think I read somewhere where the next 2 years they have the number 1 recruit in the country coming in. I think it's Julian Fleming this upcoming year, and then in the next season it's Jack Sawyer, quarterback. So it's going to keep coming. Like, Ohio State's never going to have a down year unless they have a Luke anomaly. But that is on Ohio State as a whole, and I know that I'm coming off of an adrenaline just watching Ohio State, and it may sound like I'm a huge homer, but that's what I do. I mean, this is my podcast. I mean, I can say what I want. But getting back to the game, I know I got sidetracked and I derailed for a little bit, but getting back to the game as a whole, that game was the first real test this Ohio State team had all season. Yeah, some people say Michigan was a test. No, Michigan is nothing. There's no chance that Michigan is they're just I don't even want to talk about them. But I do want to add one thing about that. Jim Harbaugh is going to keep his job. Mark it down. I said it right here at what, the 10-minute mark I said it. 30-minute mark I said it. He's going to keep his job only because they are going to win their bowl game. Yeah, win their bowl game against whoever they play, some horrible team probably, and then they're going to give Jim Harbaugh a contract extension because they don't want to go back to losing all these games and winning like 5-6 games. They want to keep the 10 wins every season, and that's what Jim Harbaugh can give you. Jim Harbaugh can give you 10 wins a season. That's the kind of coach that he is. But in the big moments, the big games, Jim Harbaugh not produce. He gets like a mental block in his head. And I know that there's a lot of stuff going on in his head because Jim Harbaugh is a weird dude. But he just has some mental block when it comes to the big games and the big moments. He can't call the right plays. He can't tell his assistant coaches to call the right plays. And it just doesn't work out for him because he loses to Penn State all the time. He loses to Michigan State all the time. He loses to Ohio State every year. He's never beaten Ohio State. And so I think it's 8 years that Ohio State has beaten Michigan in a row. And Jim Harbaugh's 0-5, I think, against Ohio State, so he just can't do it against the big teams. And yeah, I know he's beaten Michigan State a couple of seasons ago, and he's beaten Penn State. But Michigan and Ohio State, that's the rivalry. And if you can't beat your rival, then you don't deserve to be the coach. But I mean, I'm saying that as an Ohio State fan. I want him to stay because if he can't beat Ohio State, then that's good for me. That's good for me as a Buckeye fan. So I want him to give a lifetime contract so that he can stay. He can win 10 games. They can be ranked, and then they can get their butts whipped by Ohio State at the end of the season. That's what I want. But I don't know how I got derailed on Michigan. Let's get off of that. I don't want to talk about them anymore. Let's talk about Wisconsin now. Wisconsin is an interesting bunch. I thought going into the season that because they always seem to have a good defense. They always seem to have a good running back, obviously. This year, Jonathan Taylor touchdown. And a couple of years ago, they had James White. They've had Melvin Gordon. Monty Ball was a thing in college, not in the NFL. But a good running back every year. They're a running back factory, I guess you could. I mean, they're not a factory like like the Ohio State, because Ohio State, all these say, oh, we're DB university, oh, we're linebacker university, oh, we're quarterback university. No, Ohio State is NFL university. Think of all the talent, first round, second round, third round, etc., that goes into the NFL from Ohio State. They are an NFL university. Michael Thomas, Dwayne Haskins, Cameron Hayward, Malcolm Jenkins, of Ezekiel Elliott, and every other name that I haven't mentioned yet, but still, like, they're in the NFL because Ohio State recruits, and because they're a good team. They're a power in the college world, and so that's just something that Wisconsin doesn't have. I mean, they get offensive linemen and running backs. That's all that Wisconsin recruits, that are like 5-star, highly rated people. Like, that's all that I see in Wisconsin's recruiting, is just offensive linemen and running backs. I mean, yeah, they had J.J. Watt one year, or a couple of years, because he was a junior. He had to be a junior. But, I mean, they transferred in Russell Wilson, which doesn't really count. I mean, Russell Wilson was like a cheat code back in college. That was crazy. I remember watching Russell Wilson back in the day. He was a monster for Wisconsin and NC State. He was a legit cheat code. But they didn't recruit him, which goes back to my point of Wisconsin is not a power. They are just a subpar team that shows up and plays good all season, but can't get it done when it matters the most. They're not a team like Ohio State. Nobody is a team like Ohio State. That's why they're the number one team in the country, and that's why they're going to be the number one team in the country. Actually, no. You know what? I said this earlier. I don't think Ohio State is going to be the number one team in the country when it comes to the final rankings in the playoff. I think that LSU is going to win the number one spot just because the committee doesn't want. I know they don't take this into consideration, but hear me out. I don't think the committee wants to get rid of either LSU or Clemson in the first round. They think that they want the money. I know. Yeah, I know they don't take it into consideration. They shouldn't take it into consideration, but I think they will. I mean, they're human. Why wouldn't you want to see Clemson in an NCAA championship game, like a final matchup between two of the best teams in the country this year? Why wouldn't you want to see that in the championship, not in game one? That's why I think that they're going to put LSU, even with Ohio State's big double-digit victory over Wisconsin and their resume as a whole all season, beating Michigan and Penn State and Wisconsin in back-to-back-to-back weeks. So, I mean, like, LSU, yeah, they beat Bama. Wow, you beat Bama, which was a surprise. But Georgia's not good. I mean, I knew that going into the game that LSU was going to beat Georgia, and they beat them by, like, double digits. So they blew Georgia out. So I knew that wasn't going to be a thing. And then, like, all the committee thing, oh, yeah, Joe Burrow, guess what? He's an Ohio State product. So, I mean, Ohio State has the number 1 and the number 2 team in the country, basically, because their only reason LSU is up there is because Joe Burrow is down in Tallahassee, or not Tallahassee, in Louisiana, and he's throwing the football around, but he came from Ohio State. He's an Ohio guy. So that's why I think that LSU is going to be the number 1 team, because the committee wants to see LSU Tigers play the number 4 team, because they don't want to see LSU and Clemson go out and knock each other around for 4 quarters in game 1, because then one of the teams, that's a hard-hitting matchup, and they don't want to see their 2 best teams and their 2 biggest money makers, even though Ohio State makes a lot of money. Yeah, I know. I don't want to get into that right now. But they don't want to see their 2 biggest money makers knock each other out in the first round. So I think that LSU will be number 1, Ohio State will be 2, Clemson 3, and then Oklahoma 4. Because that's my official power rankings, number 1 through 4 for the playoffs. Mark it down right here. I set it around the 17.5 minute mark. So you can say it, you can mark it down, clip it, and then when I upload this podcast, you can play it back and you can count on it, because that's what's going to be. It's going to be LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Oklahoma as the final 4. But getting back to Wisconsin, I know I never finished the point on Wisconsin. Wisconsin is, to me, they're just, I know I said this earlier, they're just a basic team. Like, they don't have any big name guys, except for this season they had Jonathan Taylor. But usually Wisconsin they're just blah. Like, you don't really know what you're going to get with Wisconsin besides a running game. Like, yeah, they have a consistent defense every year, but they're just not an explosive team. They don't have that factor, that X-factor ability that teams like Ohio State and teams like Bama and Oklahoma and LSU and Clemson, all those teams have that X-factor, that explosiveness on offense and on defense. And Wisconsin just doesn't have that. That's why I knew Ohio State was going to win on Saturday night. And I knew that Ohio State was just a better team in general. I don't know why people were picking Wisconsin to be, yeah, Justin Fields had a knee injury, but he's a real man, and he played in that game, and he doesn't care about a knee injury because he cares about championships, and he cares about winning for his team. So that's what I think about the Big Ten championships so far. Any other points I want to bring up? Let me think a little bit. I don't really know if I want to talk about like the state of the rest of the ranking, like a 5 and 6. I think 6 will be 5 will be do they put Georgia back in there? I don't know if they put Georgia in there or not, because Georgia's got 2 losses now. They lost in the SEC championship game. I don't think they put Georgia at least not at 5. No, they wouldn't put them at 5. Who's up there then that they would put? Would they put Florida? They wouldn't put Florida at 5, would they? Let me see the power ranking, and then I will tell you guys my predictions for it. CFP playoff rankings. Here we go. Let's check this out right now. I'm doing this on the fly because I didn't have this scheduled. This kind of popped in my head right now. So right now, Utah is 5. They lost, so they're done. Oklahoma 1. They're at 6. They're going to move up to 4, like I said in my prediction. Baylor is 7. They lost, so they'll move down. Wisconsin was 8. They lost. They'll move down. Next one up there is Florida. And I mentioned this earlier, but Florida is 9, and would they put them at 5? That is crazy. I don't think they would put Florida at 5 just because Florida is just not a good team. If you look at Florida's team, they're just not good. Yeah, they're 10. Florida's team is just, it's just not good. Like, they're an SEC, so they get the benefit of the doubt. But Florida's team is not good. Then you move to 10, Penn State. They lost. They didn't play, so they'll probably stay stagnant in the middle. Auburn, they're not going to move up anything. Bama, I want to bring up this one point about Bama. I mentioned earlier, not in this podcast, I was talking to one of my friends, and I said I would not be surprised if Alabama makes it to the Final Four. Yeah, I know what you guys are thinking. Alabama, they lost to LSU. They're number 12 in the country. How could they move up to number 4? They'd have to leapfrog all these teams that I just mentioned earlier. They would have to leapfrog Oklahoma, who won their championship. But just hear me out here. Alabama has been to every single college football playoff. In the 5 years that they've had the playoffs, this is the 6th season right now. In the 5 years, Alabama has been to it every single year, and I think they won 3 of them. They won 2 of them, because Ohio State won the first year. Then it was Bama, Clemson. So yeah, they've won 2. And I think for some reason in the back of my mind, I don't think this is really gonna happen because I know that the committee would never do this, but just for some reason, this little thing in the back of my head is saying that Alabama is going to be the number 4 team just because they're Alabama, and they'll get the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, Tua's done for the season, but I keep psyching myself out of it and back into it. It's like into it and out of it, and it's just crazy. But for some reason, I just think that they would put Alabama at number 4 because they're Alabama. I don't want them to do it because Alabama is not deserving of the 4 spot, but I feel like that could happen because of their history. They've proven it. They've won championships in this format before. Yeah, they've lost 2 games, or lost 1 game. Have they lost 1 game? Let me check the ranking. They lost 2 games. And I for some reason, I think that that's going to happen. I'm like 90-10 that it's not going to happen. 90, but then there's that 10% that just is getting to me that they're going to make the number 4 spot. And then going down the list again, University of Oregon, they won their Pac-12, and they'll move up. Though Oregon will probably be 6 now that I think about it. Who did I say would be 5? Florida. I think I said Florida would be 5. Would they put Oregon at 5? I think they put Oregon above Florida because Oregon is on the Pac-12. They're going to go to the Rose Bowl and probably play either Penn State or Wisconsin. So, I mean, would they put Oregon? I think they would leapfrog Oregon over Florida because of their history, because of their Pac-12 championship that they won this year. So, Oregon will definitely be top 6. I don't know if they'll be 5 or 6. I'll probably put them at 5. I'll put Oregon at 5 just because they're a Pac-12 champion and Justin Herbert's a great quarterback. He still needs some work. He's like a piece of clay that they got to mold. He's got the potential. He's got bucket loads of potential, but accuracy figured out because I was watching some of his passes in the game. They were a little bit off target. And I mean, he's got the arm strength and he's got the charisma. So he's definitely got a possibility in the NFL. But moving on, next one is Michigan. And I'm not even going to discuss Michigan. Next one is 15, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is an interesting one because they're independent, so it's hard to judge Notre Dame. They have to go undefeated, which they didn't. They have lost 2 games. They're 10-2 right now on the season, and they're a tricky one. They're independent, so that means they don't play a championship game. They don't have any big wins. They lost to Michigan. They got blown out by Michigan, actually. I should change that. They got blown out. They got their booty cheeks slapped by Michigan in that game. And who was there that lost to? I don't remember. But they got 2 losses. They're an independent team. They don't play in a Big Ten, or they don't play in a championship game. So I don't think that Notre Dame has any shot of getting anywhere close to the top 6. I think they move up maybe to 12, maybe 11 at the highest, maybe 10. Maybe 10 at the highest. But they're not going any higher than that. Next one up is Iowa. Iowa's at 16. They're just probably going to stay stagnant at 16. I don't see any reason why they would move up any higher. Maybe they move up like 1 spot, maybe 2 spots to like 14 or 13, something like that. But they wouldn't get anywhere close. They're not any good. Memphis at 17. Memphis, I don't know if they won. Did they win their game against Cincinnati? I think they did. I think they beat Cincinnati again. Back-to-back weeks they beat Cincinnati, which is crazy because Cincinnati, I thought it was a good team. They were one of the Ohio State marquee matchups and marquee wins early in the season because they shut out Cincinnati, and everybody thought Cincinnati was a good team. But apparently not when it comes to playing Memphis. Next up is Minnesota. Oh, Minnesota. You're an interesting one, that's for sure. 10-2 on the season. Choked in the biggest game of the season against Wisconsin for the chance to go to the Big Ten championship. Let me tell you this. I would have rather played Minnesota in that Big Ten championship game because they would have not given us as big of a challenge as Wisconsin did. Ohio State would not have had to struggle as much if they were playing Wisconsin, or if they were playing Minnesota, than now that they played Wisconsin. Luckily, they got the victory either way, so it doesn't really matter. Next up is 19, Boise State. Boise State, they're a MAC school, so they're just, I mean, what are they, 11-1? I mean, good for them. I mean, a school in the group of 5 is never going to do anything in the college football playoff. It's just how it is. I mean, you had UCF. I don't know why I said UFC. I'm an idiot. You had UCF went undefeated and won their bowl game, and they tried to make a claim that they were the national champions. I think that was the year that one of the years Alabama won, holding up signs that say, "Oh, we want Bama." No, you don't. UCF did not want Bama back then. They definitely don't want them now because UCF is hot. But they were the team that came into my mind because I was talking about Boise State, how Boise State's in a group of 5 conference, and teams like that, they're just never going to get the same recognition. They're never going to get the same hype that a team in the Power 5 is going to get. Even like a team like Minnesota. Big Ten is the reason why they got all the way up to what they were 6 a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that's the only reason. If in the MAC, or if they were in the Sun Belt, then they would have had no chance. And if they were having the same exact season that they had in the Big Ten, they would have no chance. Maybe they'd be 22 or 24. Something like that. Something around where Boise State's at 19. They'd be around there. But they would never have gotten the national hype that they did if they were in a conference like that. Group of 5 divisions and group of 5 conferences. You guys can let me know in the comment section if you want to hear me talk about the difference between Power 5 and Group of 5 and what my feelings are on it. I mean, that's just a suggestion. I don't have to talk about it. I've got plenty of other conversational topics to talk about in future episodes. Moving on to 2020 is Cincinnati. Moved down even more. They probably dropped to either 24, 25, or unranked. My guess would be unranked because they lost back-to-back games to Memphis and they got shut out by the Ohio State. So, I mean, do they... Wait, let me check. Before I keep talking, let me check about Memphis and Cincinnati. Let me make sure that I got my facts straight. Memphis versus Cincy. Okay, let me check and get my facts straight. They did, okay. So, it's clear so that I wasn't, like, giving you guys false stuff when I was talking about this. But back to the rankings. Cincinnati will drop down probably. Now that they've lost twice, they've got 3 losses on their record. They'll probably go unranked. But that's just my thought. Maybe the committee will be nice to them and give them a 25. Next up is Appalachian State. And I've got a soft spot for Appalachian State because of what they did to Michigan that year. I think that was 2007 they did that to Michigan, which is just warms my heart that Michigan would lose a game like Appalachian State's not going to do anything. They're another one of those teams in the group of 5 that's never going to make any real noise. 2 is USC. Now, USC is definitely an interesting one. I heard rumors that they are going to bring back their coach, which is just mind-boggling to me, why you would bring him back from mediocrity. That's all he's given you, is just mediocre season after mediocre season. He's given you like 7-win seasons, 9-win seasons. That's not good enough to win a national championship. If you want to win a national championship, you have to get a coach that is going to win you a national championship, that is going to be the real deal, like a coach like Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney or Brian Day or even, I forget his name. But those guys are just right now that everybody wants, and everybody wants to mold after, because they're the guys that have the X Factor ability that can win national championships. And coaches like, what's his face at South Carolina? Why am I so bad at names? I don't know, but whatever his face is at South Carolina or USC, you guys know who I'm talking about. But he's just a mediocre. He's an average coach. Like, he's gonna get you 10 wins. Like Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is an average coach. He's gonna get you 10 wins, and he's not gonna do anything else. He's gonna win a bowl game maybe every once in a while, but people like that aren't going to win you the big games and the big moments. So you might as well move on from him now. And there was rumors that Urban Meyer was up for the coaching job at USC. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Urban likes where he's at right now at Fox. He definitely likes to take a break because of his head or his brain injury, actually. I think he had a tumor or something in his head, or he had some sort of brain thing going on. I'm not really sure right now what it was, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But people like that, they're not gonna win games. So that's my thoughts on USC. 23 is Virginia. Now, Virginia's an interesting one because they just got blown out by Clemson. So I don't think Virginia's gonna be ranked. I'm just gonna come out and say it right there. I don't think that I don't think Virginia is gonna be ranked. So let's just skip right past them. Navy at 24. Navy's just, they're Navy. Like, they're a military school. They are average at best. I mean, yeah, they can move up maybe to 20, maybe in the teens, maybe like 19 or something. They're not getting anywhere close. The college football rankings, the committee would never put Navy or Army or Air Force, if Air Force was ever a thing. They would never put those teams even in the top 5. Maybe the top 10 they'd put them in, maybe like at 8 or something, but they would never, ever put those teams in the top 4 or the top 6 because they just don't draw. And yeah, I know, I've said this before. I've said this earlier that if they don't draw or not, because it should be the best teams, the 4 best teams make the playoffs. But I mean, you got to think that see a college football playoff of like Iowa, Navy, Virginia Tech, and I don't know, Boise State. There, that could be a 4 at one point. That's a possible 4, and none of those teams draw. None of those teams are marquee names. Those aren't schools that draw anything. That would be the lowest rated college football playoff in the history of the playoffs. And so that's why I don't think they would ever do that with a team like Navy or a team that I mentioned earlier. Moving on to the last one, 25, is Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State is definitely a possible, maybe a couple spots just to fill in with some other teams that are unranked right now that could move into the top 25. I think Oklahoma State is a good team. They kind of choked against Oklahoma, and they're not really a good team. They're kind of like fake good. They seem like they could be a good team, but in the end, they're just not really. So that's kind of my thoughts on the top 25 as a whole, and I guess I could give a little bit of a prediction of who I think could make a jump into the playoffs. I think that I think maybe they could put, I know that this is a little bit of a crazy option, but they could put Indiana into the top 25. I know that Indiana is like, they're bowl eligible, but I think that Indiana is a pretty good team. Like, they're better than the rest of the Big Ten. Like, I'm in teams like Michigan State, and they're better than teams like Maryland and Rutgers. And Rutgers, by the way, I should talk about Rutgers for a little bit. No, I'll get back to Rutgers. Remind me, like I'm talking to somebody. I need to remind myself to talk about the crazy situation at Rutgers. But getting back to Indiana, just to finish up my point, I think that they could move into the top 25, probably like 24 at the highest, maybe 23, just because they're bowl eligible and they're a decent team. They're one of the better teams in the Big Ten. I think that they could move in, and I think that they will probably move in. And so, getting back to Rutgers, now Rutgers is they're a special bunch over there in New Jersey. They just hired Greg Schiano to come back and coach their team for a second stint. He was their coach back in the early 2000s, I think from like 2004 to like 2011. I think that was his coaching span at Rutgers the first time. And he had players like Ray Rice and the McCourty twins that he recruited there and played at Rutgers. And obviously they did very well. Maybe not so much off the field in Ray Rice's situation, but that's another story for another podcast. But Greg Schiano, I do like Greg Schiano because he's a former Buckeye defense coordinator. He was a Patriots defensive coordinator for like a hot second, and then he decided to quit that job to go back to Family Matters. Apparently, he had to deal with some family personal issues, and then he ends up taking this Rutgers job, which I'm not mad about. I'm happy for him. Like, go get your money. I think he's getting like $4.5 million a year or something like that. So go get your money, boy. I don't have a problem with that. And he's definitely gonna have a big project to turn around at Rutgers because they are god awful. They are so bad. Rutgers is like a high school team right now. I'm pretty sure that any high school team could beat Rutgers. Actually, no, they probably couldn't because Rutgers is just like, their guys are like 300 pounds and stuff, and they'd monster them. But getting back to Graciano, I think that he's definitely the guy for the job, in my opinion. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. I think he could bring this school back to prominence because ever since they joined the Big Ten, they have been absolute garbage, bro. They have been like a dumpster fire that got lit on fire by another dumpster fire. That's how bad they've been. There was this one video of the Rutgers actually scored a touchdown on a play, and their offensive lineman picks up the quarterback, drops him down, and punches him in the face. It was the funniest thing in the world that I've seen in a long time. So if you guys know what I'm talking about, go up and look up Rutgers offensive lineman punches quarterback, and you guys will see it. And so that made me laugh. And so that's how bad Rutgers is. They, even when they score, they punch their quarterback. And that's just, I think that's where they're at right now. That's the kind of team that they are. They're a bunch of misfits, and they're a bunch of screw-ups. But I think Greg Schiano could be the difference maker and could be the guy to change that culture. I think he will. I think that in a couple of years, if we look back in like 2024 or 2023, and we look back at what Rutgers was, have a completely different mindset about what Rutgers is as a college and as a university. I think Greg could change them to winning ways because Rutgers used to be a good team. They were making bowl games. They were winning like 9-10 games a year, and they used to be a pretty good team. They used to be a threat in whatever division they were in. I forget what the division they were in before they moved to the Big Ten. But he's definitely a mountain to climb, and I think he could do it. He's definitely the right guy for the job, especially when the whole government of New Jersey is backing you. That's a crazy story. The governor of New Jersey was like meeting with Greg Schiano for lunch just to recruit him to the job, and it obviously worked because Schiano took it, and he's going to be the Rutgers coach for next season in the foreseeable future. But I think that is going to wrap up this podcast for today. it was a good one. I enjoyed talking to you guys for about 40 minutes now, a little over. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. You can tweet me at wait_what12345. That is my Twitter. You can tweet at me any questions if you want to know anything, if you want any topics, suggest any topics for future podcast episodes, and you can definitely leave comments in the comment section down below. Also leaving suggestions and topics. So yeah, that is going to be the end of the podcast number 1 for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. I remember to change it from watching when I do my YouTube video outros, but I'm getting off topic again. Thank you guys so much for listening. Remember to hit that like button, give me your suggestions in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See